Am I free to get started, Jackie? Oh, there we go.
Well, let me introduce you first.
Oh, true. I feel
All
like
right.
everybody knows me at this point.
So, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for part two of Mass Mutual Credit Union's Financial Health Series. Today, we are getting financially vulnerable with your partner. My name is Jackie Lopez. I'm the marketing manager here at the credit union. Joining us today, we have Andrea Gideon. She is the financial literacy coordinator at Springfield Technical Community College. Today, her goal is to educate us on how to share expenses and have those important conversations with those that you love that can't be ignored. So, welcome, Andrea.
Perfect way to put it. Thank you. So, yes, as Jackie mentioned, we are going to get financially intimate today. Um, I hope that you guys are able to take away some strategies and or questions to ask your spouse if you haven't thought about getting financially intimate regarding your finances together. So, first things first, let's get started. What exactly is, financial intimacy, being financially vulnerable with your spouse? It basically refers to the level of trust and comfort that couples have when discussing and managing their finances together. It's a measure of how open and honest partners are with each other about their financial goals, their habits, and even their challenges along the way. Couples with high financial intimacy are able to talk openly and honestly about money, share their financial goals and dreams, and work together to achieve them. They have a shared understanding of their current financial situation, including income, expenses, debt, savings, and are able to make decisions together that align with their shared, keyword, shared values and priorities. On the other hand, a couple with low financial intimacy may have difficulty discussing money. It may have different views on spending and saving, and may not have a clear understanding of their shared financial situation. This obviously can lead to conflicts, mistrust, and financial stress. So, um, let's go to the next screen. So this is just recapping what I already mentioned. So being financially vulnerable with your partner requires two steps. One, you want to watch their actions as it relates to money. And then two, have a full frontal financial meeting. So when you're watching their actions as it relates to money, pay attention to things that they do regarding their lifestyle. Do they get a coffee every day? Do they pay attention to the balance in their bank account before making a purchase? That kind of thing. Pay attention to who tends to always pay for dates, because that would be another insight as to how they handle money. And then also another good giveaway without having to ask any questions is paying attention to the type of gifts that are given and received. Are they super extravagant, expensive gifts? Are they more cost-effective, frugal gifts, but very thoughtful? Pay attention to that kind of thing. And then once you have your information, you do want to have a meeting or a talk rather to discuss things like salaries, debt, and the type of debt that is had, credit scores and where you guys both stand respectively, um, and credit reports and financial goals. Another thing that I wanted to say is when you're having that meeting, you also kind of want to mention or ask about familial commitments. That's another one that's not on here, but definitely has come up in the past with people that I've met with, and is very important because sometimes you don't realize that you two don't see things the same when it comes to how to take care of commitments to family regarding money, especially if you are in a relationship with someone who is considered the breadwinner of the family. Now, this can feel overwhelming, and that's normal, but it's also can be confirmation that you both are moving in the right direction. So before moving in or quote unquote putting a ring on it, consider having this conversation. It could save you a lot of time and money and disappointment in the end. All right, now let's dig into the talk. Kicking off this conversation, It doesn't have to be awkward, although oftentimes it is. Here's a short list of questions to help break the ice. Feel free to take out a pen, paper, or your notes app to take notes because these, and I'm getting ready to share with you, are little gems or nuggets that aren't in this particular slide. So I did some research of different ways that you could kind of spark the conversation of this financial talk and found some really good questions that can be asked. So first one, if we suddenly won the lottery, what's the first thing you'd buy for us? Now this question helps to gauge your partner or spouse's priorities and dreams. Question two, if money were no object, how would you want to spend your days? And I thought that was a really great question because I know how I want to spend my days. Listening to music, potting plants, living my best life and doing all the beautiful and wonderful DIY crafts that there are under the sun. But this question helps to show what your spouse values and their lifestyle aspirations without them not necessarily having to name it specifically. Question number three. What's one thing you secretly wish we could spend more money on? This one speaks to the desires of that person, inner desires. Question number four, if we could afford to do anything we wanted, what would be our next biggest adventure? And this one gives insight to goals and long-term plans. And I think lack of an answer to this question speaks a lot as far as not having long-term plans. So there's that. Question number five, do you have any guilty pleasures when it comes to spending? Another great question. Because you could ask someone, hey, what do you spend money on every day that you don't think is a necessity? And they would say nothing. Everything I buy, I feel like I need. But if you rephrase that question and say, hey, do you have any guilty pleasures when it comes to spending? That might spark, well, I like to go to Dunkin' every day, or, I do hit up happy hour every Thursday and Friday. It just gives another way to ask the question to get them to reveal more information about themselves that otherwise they may not have realized. And then once you get the answers from those questions, it kind of makes a segue for you to dive deeper and get more specific by asking questions along the line of, what does your future look like to you? Like realistically, where do you want to live? What type of ideal job would you like to have? Do you want to own a home or rent? That's a big deal. Do you want to live in the city or suburbs, kids or no kids, close to family or far, far away? Do you like to travel or vacation? Personal note here, I, dated someone who didn't like planes, and I was like, well, this isn't going to work out because I love to travel. So these things are important. Do you intend on caring for your parents in old age? And how do you handle money? Tagging back to what I mentioned earlier, how do you handle money when it comes to family and being a financial support to your family members? Is that something that's like an itemized line in your monthly budget? That's something that needs to be discussed. And based on their response, you can move through the different topics that need to be covered. Like, do you have any financial obligations, i.e., student loan debt, alimony from a previous marriage, mandatory child support or voluntary child support to pay, um, mortgages on any other properties, credit card debt, that kind of thing. And then lastly, and just as important as all the others, do you have an emergency fund and is it fully funded? I think that question can tell a whole lot about a person and their financial standpoint and financial stability. All right. So then moving on. Oh, and this is just reiterating some of the questions I just read off. But as Jackie said, you guys will have all access to this in the PowerPoint when she puts it up. So next we're going to move on to prenup, postnup, potato, potato. Fun fact for you. Did you know that technically everyone already has a prenup. It's simply the bylaws that are currently set in place by your state of residence when a couple gets divorced. So if you don't have your own, know that the state has rules that are going to dictate how your assets are split between you and your spouse. Another fact I learned in doing some research prior to this webinar is prenups that need to be agreed upon and signed before the wedding in order to be deemed valid. And they become effective immediately after the wedding. There are some cases where if both parties agree, a prenup might be enforceable afterwards, but typically once you sign a prenup, it does not take effect. Like it needs to happen before you guys actually get married, but it doesn't become effective until after you get married. So I thought that that was kind of interesting. Now, while I can't tell anyone what to do, I will say everyone has the right to protect their assets and best interest of both themselves and their spouse. When it comes to prenups and postnups, things just need to be done in a tactful, respectful, and considerate way. Bearing in mind that you're being fair to both yourself and your partner in the process. So a couple of things about prenups, they are considered private and only typically the couples know the details of the prenups. Each party should be represented by their own attorney. This just helps to make sure that no one feels like they're being coerced or, manipulated to sign on a document without knowing the full entailments of it. And then another one is prenups, and this is misworded, so I apologize for that. But prenups that are signed before the wedding and postnups are signed after a wedding. That's something else for you guys. And then ultimately the court does decide if a prenup and or postnup will be enforced. So you guys could sign a prenup and a court get involved and decide that they don't want to go according to what's on that document, and they would rather, dictate how these assets are split up. So know that that is always something that's underlying too. All right, moving on, we are going to get into the 5 key elements for financial intimacy. The first one being equality, where both partners have equal say in financial decisions. Sounds like a no-brainer, but you wouldn't believe how often the spouse who makes more typically tends to feel like they have more say-so in what happens within the home. And it shouldn't be that way. Both partners should have, a mutual say in what happens, mutual responsibility. The next would be inclusivity, which is joint participation in the managing of finances. One of my past jobs I worked at was a municipal job where I processed death benefits for spouses who the employee of ours had passed away. And it was astounding how many widows I spoke to where they felt completely lost and clueless as to what to do because the spouse that died was the one that handled and managed all of the finances and paid all of the bills. That, they didn't know who the mortgage company lien holder was or where to mail the health insurance checks. So it's very important to be inclusive with your spouse or partner and making sure that when it's time to pay the bills, both of you are sitting down at the table and helping to write those checks or, make those online payments, balancing that checkbook, I guess you could say. Next one is transparency. Information around finances should be shared openly. This one, obviously, you always want to make sure you either run transactions by your spouse before you make them or be transparent about them after they've been made. So that one's kind of a obvious one there. Sustainability, the ability to stick to the plan long term. There's nothing worse than creating a budget or a plan with someone and then failing miserably at it because it didn't work for you and you never spoke up about it to say anything. Um, Sustainability goes a long way when managing finances and making sure that you guys are successful in doing so. And then flexibility, be willing to adapt as needed to ensure the success of the plan. Um, when it comes to flexibility, when I meet with students and, adults, regarding their finances, I reinforce and reiterate very much that this is not a one time you make a budget, set it and forget it, and you never have to look at it again. Um, your budget is going to need to be flexible. Some months, you guys might have certain uh, things that need to get paid that don't happen on a monthly basis. You need to have that flexibility to be able to go in, make those changes as needed, and then get back on track to the original budget, and keep trucking along for the success of the plan. Alrighty. And then some takeaways. So financial intimacy does not come naturally to everyone. In fact, to most people, it doesn't. It takes time and effort to develop it, right? Every relationship dynamic is unique, but there are some general tips and ideas to help improve your financial intimacy. First one is have a positive attitude and focus on the shared vision for the future. Having a common goal is going to be key, to knowing your why. And it sounds cheesy, but knowing your why goes a long way in sticking to the plan. So having a positive attitude and sharing that vision for your guys' future together. Set aside regular times to talk about money. So that way it's not like, oh my gosh, I have to bring this conversation to him or her. And, I don't want them to be in a bad mood or anything like that. If it's on the calendar, both of you guys know Sunday night at 7, we're having pizza and, talking about bills. Um, and so that way it takes the frustration out of
I can't.
having to reach out.
Andrea,
Yes,
someone said you're no longer sharing the slides. Could you unshare them and then try and share your screen again?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. This happened last time too. I'm not too sure what's going on with Zoom. How about now?
Can everyone see that? Yes, they're up. Thank you.
Perfect. Now, did they get the previous screen? Let's see. Did you guys see that one?
Some people stopped and some people's didn't. So,
Oh, gotcha. All right. Well, it's a good thing you guys are going to make this available for everyone on YouTube later.
right.
Awesome. Okay, so next one was discuss your concerns and priorities. There's nothing worse than two people in a relationship together and you guys aren't on the same accord and two of you have different priorities. Not going to get very far. So make sure you guys' priorities are shared. And then listen actively and try to understand your partner's perspective. Um, Active listening is a learned thing. It's not automatic. Um, when you are actively listening, you're not waiting for your spouse to be done to interject and speak what's on your mind. You're really taking the time to take in what they're saying. And one exercise I have read about that helps people become active listeners or improve their active listening is once your spouse is done talking, they say to reiterate what you heard back to your spouse. So, for example, what that looks like is your spouse says, I really want us to get better about money because I hate, not knowing where my money's going. And so the spouse that's listening actively says, okay, so what I hear is you would like to take time for us to write down and itemize what we're spending our money on because that helps you feel more confident in knowing where the money's going. That would be an example of active listening. All right. And then be vulnerable and dig deep to develop open and honest communication. Not only does that help for your spouse to love you more and love you deeper, see you in even better of a light, but it helps to just be, forthcoming in your guys' communication. Establish trust and accountability. That's, self-explainable. Shared responsibilities. Seek professional help if needed. And then start early. If you never talked about finances with your spouse and you guys have always just been doing your own thing, now's the time to have that conversation and, see what you guys' plans are and make sure that they align. Alrighty, now I'm not too sure if I spoke too fast. Hopefully I didn't, but we ended a bit earlier than typical. As always, there are some ways to get in contact with the credit union. They have an email address, phone number, website, and you guys can always stop by the office as well. They do have certified financial counselors for you guys, which is awesome. That is able to work with you one-on-one towards your goals. All right, so I am going to open it up and ask if anyone has any questions. I'll take a look at the chat. Do you need me to further explain anything that I've gone over? And that sort of thing. So let's take a look. So someone asked, how does this all change based on age? Well, I think the meat of this stays the same regardless of what age, right? I think the work just gets more challenging the older we get, because naturally the older you get, the more set in your ways you become. But maybe the questions that get asked might change a bit. But the bottom line of needing to have the financial conversation stays the same. I hope that answers the question. If not, just pop it in the chat and maybe wording the question a different way, and I can try and get it from a different perspective. All right, so this person said that they are older now and their partner was the sole earner in the house prior to their wife passing away. Now, I'm not sure if you guys are both contributing into your household now, but it sounds like a date dinner night. Oh, no. So it sounds like a date dinner night might be in order. And just having that conversation on where do you guys see the future and taking it from there. Because that often will open up the gates, I guess you could say, as far as, do you see yourselves living together? The type of home, price, and it just will should just flow from there. I would think, if you guys are both on the same page. All right. Does anybody else have any questions?
If anyone has any questions beyond this part in time, feel free to email us at support@mmfcu.zendesk.com. Andrea, thank you again for today.
Absolutely. As always, it's a pleasure. And I look forward to our next one.
Absolutely. If you can just go back to the second slide really quick, Michelle would like to take a peek at that.
Absolutely. Hold on.
And Michelle and everybody else on the webinar, you will get an email from us that will include the recording today, the slides, and the presentation.
I think it's this one.
Might be the one before that.
One more back. Okay. This one?
I think it's the definition of financial intimacy.
There you go.
Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's kind of just throwing this out there too. In the economy that we live in now, it seems more necessary than ever before to have these conversations with people, and make sure that you guys are on the same page. Because money, as hard as it is to come by in this society of inflation that we live in, there's no time to waste, you know? So, all right. Well, thank you again, everyone. You all have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.
Thank you, Andrea.
All right. Take care.